Good afternoon and welcome to the Knowledge Series, the Abu Dhabi edition. As we've traveled the globe this past year discussing transformation in the legal industry, it's been fascinating to see the themes that have come out in each city. In Mumbai, it was very much litigation funding and the anticipation for it to come to India. In Riyadh, it was mediation and the role of women. Lagos was very much arbitration and the young arbitral community and their desire for change. New York, I think we were all taken aback to hear how unprepared the courts were for the pandemic and the lack of digitization in the court system. And London became a showcase for innovation all across the legal industry. So as we rounded those cities and we started coming home to Abu Dhabi and thinking about what we would discuss here, well, the most transformative thing of the year happened right here in our backyard and in our home territory, which was the Abraham Accord and the opening of relations with Israel, communication, and travel. So we thought, what better forum than the Knowledge Series for us to play our role, to bring lawyers from Israel together with legal professionals in the UAE, general counsels, to have legal technology entrepreneurs. And let's all do what we do, which is have an open dialogue, exchange ideas, and start setting the groundwork for collaboration and cooperation. So what you have today is certainly a brilliant set of panelists, and of course, outstanding moderators in Rachel Pether and Linda Fitzallen, who will do what we do, which is stir the conversation and lead the dialogue. And so with that, Rachel, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Dilip, for that introduction. And as Dilip mentioned, this is our final event for the Knowledge Series 2020. We've been all across the globe. We've been to Mumbai, Riyadh, Lagos, New York, London, and now we're coming home to Abu Dhabi, which we're very excited about. I'm not going to repeat everything Dilip said about the Abraham Accord. For once, I actually agree with everything he said, so we'll just leave it at that. But I would like to thank our partners, one of whom is Phoenix Advisors, which Dilip is the managing partner and CEO of, and also the ADGM Arbitration Centre, of which Linda Fitzallen is the CEO of. Now, as Dilip mentioned, one thing that's really differentiated the Knowledge Series is the engagement from the audience, and we really hope that that continues today. Many of you may not be familiar with Big Marker, but you have the Q&A functionality, and you also have the functionality to upvote other people's questions. So please do this, and it will send it to the top of our pile, as it were. So I'm going to hand over to Linda to introduce the panelists, but I would also like to test your engagement by actually releasing the first polling question, which is, do you believe the Abraham Accord will open or increase opportunities for your business or practice area in the foreseeable future? So I'll release that and I'll hand over to you, Linda.
Awesome, good.
I think we might be experiencing...
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's to have you all with us this afternoon here in Abu Dhabi, and wherever you are around the world, particularly a great pleasure for us to be. Okay, all right. Sorry. No.
Maybe while we're working out some of the technical issues, Linda, why don't I take a moment and maybe read the bios? How's that? So we have on our panel today, as I said, a brilliant group of speakers. So let me introduce you to Bill Watts, General Counsel of Abu Dhabi Catalyst Partners. And let me also introduce you to Shirza Azran, Partner, Corporate and Securities Group of Maytar. I will introduce you now to Yair Geva, Partner, Head of Tech Group, Herzog, Fox and Newman, and to Khalid Shivji, Partner, Keystone Law Middle East. And finally, to Ilan Adman, who is CTO of Law Geeks.
Thanks so much for those introductions, Dilip. And we'll be hearing from the panelists shortly. Just the first poll with regards to the Abraham Accord, open or increasing opportunities for business, we had 57% say yes, definitely, and 25% saying too soon to tell, and then 18 saying I see positive signs it will happen. So 0% said unlikely. So I guess we've got a continuum of people there, with everyone saying that it will probably affect them positively in some way. So that's a really good backdrop to kick this off with. So I'd like the first question, Bill, we'd like to start with you, and we'll be tapping into your thoughts on technology for in-house counsel and law firms a little bit later, but maybe you could start by just telling us a bit about Abu Dhabi Catalyst Partners and its partnerships, and also what you're seeing here in ADGM with regards to tech, particularly legal tech.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. I appreciate it. And thank you for allowing me to take part in the conversation today. I think it's a fascinating topic, and I think it's particularly relevant for us here in Abu Dhabi. So Catalyst Partners is an investment firm based here in Abu Dhabi, in the Abu Dhabi global market. And our goal in part is to promote the growth and the development of the ADGM. And we do that by bringing really great businesses here to Abu Dhabi and helping them grow. And we've done this by partnering with all types of organizations, primarily investment management firms. It could be global firms. It could be regional firms in the private equity and the private credit space. We've also partnered with specialty finance companies as well as operating businesses. And so what we're working towards, what we're seeing here, to answer your question here in Abu Dhabi, is a growing and thriving ecosystem, which I think can be interesting for any business, particularly technology companies and those in the legal tech space. You're seeing a real growth in the financial services sector, and you're seeing a real growth in the professional service provider industry, such as law firms, accounting firms, and compliance professionals. And as a result, like I said, I think it's a real opportunity for legal tech to grow here in Abu Dhabi. From a tech perspective, particularly, I think the ADGM has been a real thought leader on how technology can improve regulation and legal systems and promote the growth in a financial center. And just by way of example, and I don't see Linda here now, but the ADGM Arbitration Center has a fully digitalized court and dispute resolution center, which is the first one that I'm aware of globally. It's extremely forward thinking, and frankly, given how difficult 2020 has been for everyone, it really was well positioned to take advantage, to continue to progress during the pandemic. And what it does is it enables the court system to have seasoned and experienced judges to mediate and to decide on disputes, and they can sit anywhere around the world, but it'll be technically held in Abu Dhabi, where English common law is applied. And I think that's very appealing for businesses looking to do business here. In addition to that, the ADGM just has a general ecosystem for technology and growth. It's known as a fintech hub. There's typically conference and seminars here. It's been very active in the fintech regulatory space. There's a regulatory sandbox here in the ADGM. And you see a lot of groups in Abu Dhabi, such as Hub 71, who are very focused on promoting the technology sector, which I think this conversation is very interesting about that. So I think the bottom line is here at Catalyst, we're seeing more and more tech innovation, including legal tech. I think it starts from the top down, going from the ADGM down to all the individual companies and startups and founders who are moving to town. And I think given that partnership between the ecosystem here, I think it'll only grow over time, which is exciting for Catalyst.
No, that's great. Thanks so much, Bill. And I want to come back to those points you made about the ecosystem and also the regulatory environment a bit later on. But Shira, when we spoke previously, you mentioned how the pandemic has created unparalleled opportunities for Israeli technology, and the year has actually ended up being a really strong one for investments. And so with your clients, spanning entrepreneurs, startups, and seasoned players, are you seeing appetite from your clients to invest in legal tech?
So first, I think we're living in unprecedented times, right? So we started with the pandemic and with obviously the health related issues that it brought to us. But once the world adapted to that, we saw specifically in Israel that the pandemic was an accelerator of technology and moving into digital and more technology-based services. So we're actually just finishing kind of our review and analysis of 2020, and we again see that this is a record high number of investments into the Israeli technology. It's above $10 billion this year, which again is a record high number for us. And to answer your question, Rachel, then I think we need to look specifically at this specific market of legal tech. So we have seen tech-enabled technology for quite some time, right? It's not something that is new. We've seen e-discovery platforms and technologies, but the question is whether there would be kind of a more broad-based adoption of technologies. And if we look at the kind of the demand side of the market, then we have the law firms or the lawyers, or even a kind of a legal in-house, as Bill indicated, that historically were viewed as maybe conservative and not, certainly they weren't viewed as early adopters of technologies, but we see a change in that. And how do I see that change? First, well, law firms are, based on a certain hierarchy, and that hierarchy is leaning towards incorporating and handing over management to the younger generation. We also see a very interesting, a workforce coming into the legal profession, which are the millennials. And one of the things that struck me the most was when I was in Rome in the IBA conference, the International Bar of Association conference. I met colleagues from around the world, and there was one question that I asked each one of them, whether it was Europe, Poland, Lithuania, France, Spain, England, or if it was Australia or even Asia. And I was asking them, how do you experience this generation? And it started with a sigh, and then they said, that they see that they want a more work-life balance, type of a relationship with the law firms, and they want more interesting and intriguing work and not repetitive work. And that was across all countries, but for one place, India. And then I asked the guy in India, what's so different, in your law firm compared to others? And he said, well, they either work for me or they don't have any work. So I will put that aside, but I think generally we see a start of a change in the industry, in the legal industry, with more request for technology, more demand for incorporating and doing away with the kind of the repetitive and more labor-intensive work. And that is brought both by those factors of kind of the younger generation coming into play. Now, we also see from the investor side that a raising of capital in Israel and in the US has never been higher, right? Funds, private equity funds, venture capital funds have raised millions and trillions of dollars, and they need to deploy it. And eventually, I think that is one of the reasons that I think eventually we'll see them looking into the legal market as well. If I take an example, Ilan is sitting in our panel and is from Logix. They had a substantial round just earlier this year from your normal venture capital funds. These were not funds that are just invested in legal tech or lawyers or anything of that sort. It was kind of the normal, kind of regular venture capital funds, and they invested substantial amounts. So, and the last factor, I think, after we reviewed kind of the law firms and the legal situation and the availability of funds, we have technology that is mature and is able to also serve this market. So if I look at all of these factors, and I like to compare legal tech to fintech, right? It's kind of legal tech, I think, is the overlooked sister of fintech, and we've seen the booming in interest and the technology in fintech. And maybe if I asked you 5 years ago, you wouldn't realize that would be the case. So I think we're at early stages, but for sure I'm optimistic that we'll see more and more investors coming into this space because there's demand and there is ability to supply, and we're in an area of change. That's for sure.
Thank you so much, Shira. Linda, you're back. How's
I hope I'm back at least. Can you hear me?
Very much so. Yes.
Thank you. Apologies. It's ironic that we're talking about legal tech and I have no legal tech. Anyway, it's been a tough year. So there we go. Anyway, my apologies to everybody, particularly to our panel speakers. Yeah.
Welcome back. It has been a tough year, but there's been a silver lining. So you're back and we're talking about legal tech. As long as you're back, I will ask one question and then I'm going to fade out. Shira, that was very interesting, and thank you very much talking about how we have a new generation looking to do different kinds of legal work. And on that note, Yair, I think it would be really interesting, for us to learn about your group in your firm, the fact that you've hired a chief analyst now. What kind of work are you doing? What kind of value are you trying to bring clients in the work that you're doing? And, what is the response from clients to that? So if you could expand on the work you're doing, it would be great.
Happy to. So first, we established about a year ago a subsidiary at the firm that is called Herzog Strategics. And that subsidiary is actually a consulting company that was established based on a need from the UAE to explore technologies in Israel that may be relevant to the UAE and specifically to a few provinces there, specifically in Ras Al Khaimah area. And since then, we kind of discovered that there's a great need for the clients to have from us lawyers information that is not just legal. And hence we explored and started that initiative of hiring a chief analyst. And that person and the team are looking specifically at deals, consolidating data, and serving the clients with insights as to what new technologies can be relevant for their operations. So I would say that now when we are looking at deals, whether these are venture capital deals, private equity, etc., we would also sometimes be providing analysis as to the technology and its relevancy for the clients. That has been the rationale for that appointment and start of the consulting company.
That's great. Thanks so much. Yeah, we can go into that a bit more as well about the changing roles of lawyers and also the skills required as well. Ilan, I'd like to go to you now. And, what is it that attracted you to pursue startups in the legal industry when other sectors, such as fintech, were available to you? And why did you choose legal? And also, although LawGeeks has quite a US-focused market at the moment, are you looking to expand to the Middle East?
Wow, that's a tough one. I think the main reason why I chose LawGeeks, well, before it was even LawGeeks, it was just an idea. I think legal is like the last fortress of non-disruption in the entire world. So every other industry has been disrupted by technology. If you look at even accounting and pretty much every industry, medicine, wherever you look at, you'd see technology coming in, playing a big part. Even the latest ones were early 2000s, and the only untouched industry was legal. I remember when we first started out, I was at a conference about legal tech, and I was expecting to see all the other cool AI shops and whoever's building technology for legal. And it was all about, printers that print more pages per minute and carpeting that absorbs more noise. And this was legal tech. And I think WordPerfect were presenting there. I didn't even know they still existed. So it was kind of like, let's try and bring AI to this industry that only now adopted word processors, and see how it works. And when we first started out, by the way, if we're talking about investment, when we first started out, we couldn't raise any funding, because whenever we said to someone, hey, we're going to bring AI to legal, they made fun of us. It's like, no, you're not. They're not going to accept you. And nowadays, when we, as Shira mentioned, we just raised a very substantial round. We had to fight investors off with a stick. We basically, this was a COVID round, right? So, normally I'd have to fly around the world and wear a suit and be nice to everybody. I didn't even have to get out of the house. I didn't have to get out of my jammies. I just, sat here in front of my laptop, and people would just take my money. And we had to, very seriously choose who we want our investors to be. So the world is completely transformed. The legal industry, and I think COVID is a great accelerator, as Jerry mentioned. It drove people to adopt new ways of thinking, and new technology comes next. So everybody's now using video conferencing. Lawyers didn't use video conferencing before that. They would fly halfway around the world for a meeting. Now everything. Now the person from next door is actually Zooming me because he's not going to get up and across the office. So everybody's looking for ways to be more efficient, to be more data driven. You see, and it's a process that started before that. So if you look not at law firms but at GCs and in-house counsel, there's been this need to get in line with the business. So suddenly they have budgets. They need to know how much they're spending. They need to know, when to hire more people, and they're expected to be, just like any other department. And now we start seeing that there's this commoditization of legal work. So, if you hire outside counsel, you're starting requesting, caps and fixed rates and all these things that are now beginning to happen. And then COVID came, and now everybody wants to improve. Everybody wants to become more efficient. So other than the first quarter that was really slow, we started seeing booming requests for technology. Now, as for the UAE, we've already started seeing the first signs of cooperation. We're very excited about this because this is a very large community that does a lot of business and does most of it in English. So this is and it's right next to us. It's close to home. The mentalities are much more similar than it is with the U.S., which is most of our clients come from. So there's a huge potential in this market for us, and I think we're already starting to see some first negotiations, and I think it's going to be very exciting.
Rachel, may I run a very quick question by Ilan, a follow-up on what he was saying?
Sure.
So Ilan, kind of one of the challenges that we have when we try to integrate technology here is the overflow of other technology and communication channels that we have, right? So I was trying this AM to put Monday into play at our group, right? We can manage tasks through Monday, the platform, but people are getting all those WhatsApp and emails and phones, etc., and Zooms. And we kind of see that there's a challenge to get in more tools when anything already is kind of flushed with all those noises. How do you overcome that with Logix or any other solutions that you're proposing?
So I have a very strict, I would say, product methodology. I believe the one product that we all have that's been tried and true, and it's the best product work ever, is the water faucet you have in your kitchen. So it's not there. You don't have to think about it. When you need water, you just turn it on. It magically appears here, and then you use it to wash your dishes or wash your hands, and it magically disappears there, and you don't have to think about where it came from or where it went. And it's just the perfect product. So it's completely seamless, and it's there when you need it. It's not imposing on your life in any way. And I think every product should be like that. And I think the legal industry in particular imposes even more limits on how we develop products. Because if I sell to to programmers like me, we have a gazillion different tools that I'm using every day. I use my Jira and my Monday and my Trello and my Kanban and a bunch of different tools and my IDE and a bunch of different software. And I keep going from one to the next. And I have 3 screens right now in front of me just to fit all of these. And this is because we're used to this. Lawyers used to work with pens and papers, or at some point with Word and Outlook, and that is it. And it's very important to us at Logix that we integrate with the lawyers where they are. So instead of, I think the first version that we had, it's kind of, you had to install some software. You had to go into this window and see a different environment. And we had tons of trouble getting the change management to work, to onboard new clients. They would not use the system. You have, the general counsel who's very excited about this new technology, and none of his employees would use the technology because now they have to go and upload the document to the cloud and then get the results and download it back and maybe send it to an e-signature solution, which is a different software. So the change management, we couldn't get around it, and we're basically zero change management. We wherever you are, we are. If you're using Outlook, just forward the email to contracts@logix.com, and you'll get a reply. Here's your red-lined contract. And if you use Salesforce, it's a sales contract, then within Salesforce, you'll have sent to Logix, or it's automatically when you get a new contract, and you get the red line version within Salesforce, and every other contract management system or whatever system you have, if you have Aptus or whatnot, we basically integrate with it. We try to be as seamless as that faucet in your kitchen. Most of the time we get it right. Sometimes it still cracks a bit, but we'll get there. And I think the fact that lawyers make AI be more human-like and make us be more like another person on your team is very challenging, but this is what drives the technology forward. So I'm very happy about that.
That's great. Thanks so much, Ilan. And I think that's a really nice segue. I'll just, Carla, hand over to you, and then we'll open it up to questions. We've already had some come in from the audience, but so Khaled, Ilan's talked about, the changing way that law is delivered in practice, and you're a 100% virtual law firm, one of only 2 in the UAE, I believe. So what are you doing, in terms of flexibility and technology to change the legal landscape here, and how are you trying to change the way that law is delivered?
Well, thank you for that question, Rachel. It's a very, very important question, and it really goes to the fundamentals as to why Keystone Law was established in 2002. The firm was established in the UK as a means of disrupting the traditional law firm model, and it did so by effectively decentralizing the core functions of a law firm and pushing those out to the lawyers using technology. So at Keystone Law, nearly all of the lawyers work remotely from home offices or co-working offices. And we all collaborate using legal technology to stay in touch with each other and to work on client matters. We don't use any fixed offices except for the sake of having meetings. That was prior to the coronavirus pandemic. But what happens now is that as a result of being completely decentralized, we are now able to offer very, very creative solutions and offer really, really tailored solutions for clients, because we don't have to worry about chasing overheads, which are the core cost base for a law firm that they need to recover on any client matter. We don't have to worry about how much we're billing, because every fee earner at Keystone Law receives a fixed percentage of what they bill and collect from clients. And all we have to worry about is making sure that we can deliver the best possible service to clients. And we do that by way of a system called Keyed In, which is our core legal tech solution, which was designed in-house at Keystone Law, and it was designed by legal engineers and lawyers. And it was designed with the idea that clients don't want their lawyers to be bogged down by administration. They want their clients to be able to walk with them through their journey on a particular matter. They want their clients to be engaged with them, and they want their lawyers in particular to be able to deliver expert advice all the way through the transaction without being worried about filling out forms, logging time, or filling out other or administrative functions that they have to complete. Now, Keyed In itself is, again, it's web-based entirely, and it's really designed to allow lawyers to be lawyers. And that means that a lot of the functions that lawyers typically have to undertake by way of compliance, anti-money laundering, know your customer checks are all automated. So, for example, in the United Kingdom, the Keyed In function, the Keyed In system, integrates with external databases such as Companies House and the Royal Mail postcode finder, so that when lawyers are filling out forms online to file KYC checks on their potential clients, all of the data that they need in order to fill out those forms is all pre-populated using publicly available verified data sets. Now, maybe that might only save 1 minute per client matter, but if you imagine that every lawyer saves 1 minute per client matter, and that they work on perhaps 100 matters per year each, and then if you multiply that by the 400 lawyers that Keystone Law has, you're looking at saving nearly 40,000 minutes of administration and processing time, which equates to roughly over 600 hours. And so you can imagine just how much time is saved by simply automating those key functions. And so the whole purpose of that Keyed In system and the legal tech that Keystone Law uses is really designed to make it as simple as possible for us to be. Over to you, Rachel.
Yeah, that's great, Khaled, and that's definitely a recurring theme. You know, it's really about using technology to get rid of those boring, monotonous tasks and free up time to do the more interesting tasks. We have had some audience questions come in as well, but I think, Linda, I'll hand over to you to ask sort of one of the broader questions to all of the panelists.
Sure, absolutely, Rachel. And in fact, I think the next question that I was going to ask dovetails in with one of the questions that we've received, which was for the panel generally. For each of your areas of practice or business areas, what do you currently see as the main issues or the stumbling blocks in the take-up and the use of legal tech? In prepping for this session, we spoke a lot about data quality. We spoke a lot about law firms not being ready, investment, whatever else that might be. But Shira, maybe if I could start with you, your views generally. What is the issue with the uptake with legal tech?
I think we're just still in the education phase. Okay, so both for the clients, be it the law firms or in-house departments, but also in terms of the technology that is being offered. So we in our firm always look out for new technology and test it versus our human skills. Okay, so we take a tool that is addressed to analyze a contract in due diligence, and we do that and compare it to the results of our teams. And we've seen, for now, we haven't kind of found yet the kind of the right solution that will make that replacement. So I think we're very open to adopting new technology. And as I indicated, I think it's kind of a general change, and specifically in our firm, it's young in age, if you call it. And then, but we see technology that are not yet mature enough. And I expect that to change because, as I indicated earlier, technology is much more advanced, and I think investors will look more and more into legal tech, and that will push advancement in technology and adapting it more custom made to the legal tech, and then we'll see it used more and more. So I think it's the education phase, but the next few years should be, very kind of a great change should be seen.
And I suspect that it might have been many more years had the pandemic not descended upon us as well. That was probably the circuit breaker. But Bill, from in-house counsel perspective, do you think, and you've had both sides coming from law firms in the US, from government, and now here with Catalyst, is there one side or the other that has a difficulty more with the uptake, in-house counsel as opposed to law firms that you see?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I wasn't thinking about it that way, but as I sit here today, I think it was more difficult when I was external counsel. And I think the reason is, what is the practice of law? The practice of law is giving sound legal advice to your clients, being a strong advocate for your clients. Your goal is to be right, because if you're not right, your client can run afoul of the laws, and that's not where you want to be. So I think part of the question of uptake is the legal tech sound enough to ensure that when it's employed, it's going to deliver a correct answer? And so think about it this way. One of the questions that's really interesting and somewhat unique to law, maybe financial services, but really law, is the question of sovereignty. So you have all the different countries of the world. Every country has a different legal and regulatory regime. The laws are different everywhere you go. So if you're sitting as an asset manager like I am, and I want to do a securities offering in 5 different countries, what kind of technology is out there to help me parse through all the regulations to make sure when I make an offering in the UAE and then Israel and the US that I comply with all the laws? Those are the questions that I have now. So it's a little bit different than when I was external counsel, but it gets back to the question, as a lawyer, you want to make sure that the advice that you're either providing or receiving is correct. So there's really no room for error. So I think that's error. So in my mind, that's part of the reticence, I think, on the part of lawyers to the uptake of legal tech generally.
Right, interesting. From the perspective of your clients, I think, as we've spoken before, and what you've done at the firm with this interesting development recently for you, what do you think? What are you seeing as the resistance there? Because you're obviously, and so is Shira's firm, going ahead of the curve in that. But for others, what are you seeing?
Right. So I'm not sure there is resistance, as there are not necessarily at those seamless tools that Ilan had described. I think that once you have those tools, people will utilize them. I don't think, Dan Shamgar here is writing on the wall that whether the younger generation should lead the development. I think that the younger generation, they all understand that we are not going to so easily be relying on inexpensive young labor anymore, right? People are not as enthusiastic to be junior lawyers working very hard at the firms, doing repetitive work, as we spoke earlier. And as such, people are looking to do things that are meaningful to them. And any tool that would replace those repetitive actions would be both a great recruitment tool to getting more, smarter and more enthusiastic young lawyers, and would also save the cost for people who are sitting now at Bill's chair, right? So I don't think anything should be stopping that, and I'm not sure there is resistance, as there are not necessarily those tools, or that they are not yet marketed properly. By the way, regarding the COVID-19 effect, I think we should distinguish between really legal tech tools like Logix are developing, and those tools that simply save us time and effort, right? When I was working in the US, I remember us flying to Minnesota in the winter to do due diligence out of boxes somewhere, right? You now do it on a data site. You go on a Zoom, you see people's faces. It's not a teleconference anymore, but these are just infrastructure moves. To us, the more interesting things are what companies like Logix are doing, that really affect the way we work in our profession. So I think we just need to see more tools that are out there and that are working, and they'll be adopted.
Completely. Rachel, would you like to move on or pick up one of the questions? There was an interesting question about the breakthrough in the legal industry there, which might be interesting.
Yeah, there's so many great questions coming in from the audience. So I did promise engagement, so I would be remiss to now ignore you all. But we've had a question coming in from Jade, who said, what type of tech breakthrough in the legal industry do you expect? And I guess we've touched on some of this already, but he says, having spent most of my career with big law and then established a not so conventional law firm, I can see the challenges: low adoption rates, law firms' resistance, inadequate tools and solutions. So I don't know if anyone would like to comment on Jade's question.
I would, and I also would like to touch on what Bill and Yair said. I think it's something I mentioned before, that the lawyers are making us work harder. Okay, we need to become better at providing technology solutions, much more so than in other industries. And adoption is part of it. And I think Bill said something that really was right on the nose, because when we come to lawyers are, I don't want to offend anybody, but most lawyers are, by definition, people who are risk averse. They try to minimize change and risk, and you can't deploy solutions who are half-baked with lawyers. They're, by definition, they're the latest adopters. They need the product to be already tried by millions of other people and be solid. And what Yair said, the tools are just not there yet. And I think one of the things that we're seeing, especially during COVID, is legal ops is something that is mentioned more and more. We have a lot of improvement within firms or within legal departments that is not necessarily legal tech as we see it. It's not AI that does your work for you, but it does solve a lot of workflow issues, a lot of things that are around the operations part of legal. And I think if you look at any industry, you'd see that at least 20% of time is basically there. It's always around those other things. And there was a question that came in the chat, I think, when we spoke about how AI can solve things or how AI can do things for you. And I think this is one of the misconceptions that people have regarding AI that slows down adoption, because the expectation of, I'm going to get some legal tech and it's going to sit here on my desk and just, get rid of all the stuff and all the clutter that I have here and do the things for me. We're not there yet. We're not going to be there in a few years. We basically use technology to solve small problems, and hopefully small problems that we have a lot of. So if you have, your M&A that you've been working on, that Shira's been working for the last 6 months, you're not going to get a robot to do it for you. It's a very unique deal. You need to know all the aspects of it. You need to know both companies that are involved and maybe more. This is not something that's going to come fully packed in a box and ready to go. If you're doing, I was talking to a potential client and they're doing thousands and thousands of software licenses agreement every year. This is something you can throw with an AI, define your policy, set it and forget it, and you'll never have to see a software license again. So the setting of expectations, if you want to save time, you can. Find the thing that you're doing the most, which is the simplest thing, get rid of it, send it to the AI or workflow management system or whatnot, get rid of that. It'll free up your time to do more impactful work. That's where the technology can help you.
I wouldn't mind stepping in here, if I may, Rachel and Linda, just to add to what Ilhan said about lawyers and their personalities. So in respective law firms and very large legal departments, what is possible to run personality profile exercises on the makeups of the lawyers in those organizations. And it's a very, very interesting exercise, because once you start plotting on a chart the makeup of the lawyers in an organization, you tend to find that, as Ilhan alluded to, that a lot of them are very, very detail orientated. They exhibit traits such as being very cautious about trying things that are new, very precise, being very precise with the work they do, being very deliberate with the work they do, always questioning new ways of working, and being very formal in their approach. And this is the most dominant personality type within the legal industry. I myself have run these kind of exercises in other legal departments that I've worked in, and this tends to be the most dominant trait. So therefore, one of the key barriers in terms of adopting legal technology comes about not because of anything nefarious on behalf of lawyers who perhaps don't want to adopt it. It merely means that legal tech providers have to try and change that approach that they use in order to sell legal technology to lawyers by taking more time to counsel them and coach them on the use of that technology, showing them how they can change the processes, how it can help to change culture. And as Ilhan said, all the use cases that you have where a lawyer might churn through hundreds and hundreds of IP agreements every year, or may have to spend the best part of a year working on an M&A transaction. It's that legal tech providers have to show those lawyers how they're going to benefit from that legal tech the next time that they embark on a very, very big transaction, so that the lawyers won't be afraid to adopt those solutions as well.
Yeah.
And I also think that as part of adopting legal technology, the responsibility also falls upon clients too. And also I just want to say that clients should be pushing their law firms in order to adopt more efficient measures, adopting legal technology, and in a hope that that will then help to reduce the fees that clients have to pay overall.
Do you know, that's a great segue actually into two audience questions that were just coming in. And, it's interesting, you talk about the profile of lawyers, but also sort of tying back to Shira said about how skills and the sort of mentality is changing. We actually had someone ask, they'd love to know from where and how a young lawyer with good tech knowledge can start careers in legal tech in Abu Dhabi or the Middle East. So I guess, well, first up, you could speak to most people on our panel. But so maybe we can come back to that one a little bit later, but tying into your closing point, Khaled, about cost to clients. We've had a question saying, what about cost to clients? Will they increase due to legal tech? I don't know who would like to comment on that. Shira, what are your thoughts? Maybe you could talk about how you're incorporating technology at the law firm and what the knock-on effect to clients is there.
So I think, the short answer is that I think that eventually it's going to make the bills to the client more cost effective, okay? So if I look, and I totally relate to what Ilhan said earlier, that there needs to be a setting of the expectation. It's not that we will have an artificial lawyer, okay? I don't think that's the case. But I think that the labor-intensive work or the repetitive work, which is now built based on the hour, right? That's kind of the revenue model of law firms. That would be eliminated, and then we will see lawyers be more focused on those matters that require leveraging experience, and we can use technology for that as well, to map the market. We and our firm, representing this much of the technology companies and investors, we survey ourselves and we see what are the trends, and then we can use that. The most annoying argument always in negotiation is well, this is customary. Well, how do you know if something is customary? When you have data, you can know that, and you can take the data and you can understand what is the market and you can use that. So I don't think we'll get to a place where we will replace lawyers, but I think that, as indicated by the other panelists, Khaled and also Ilan, we'll take away with those tasks that are not maybe that interesting as well, but they have a cost, right? And that will be replaced by technology. I don't think that it would eventually be kind of rolled over into the clients, but they will eventually have a more cost-effective bill when they have lawyers analyzing and negotiating and dealing with matters that require their experience with the data available and making it more efficient, right? When I do an M&A transaction, and we typically do it cross-border, so we are opposite US law firms, there are surveys in the US that show what is the market practice. And that makes the negotiation very easy. We know what are the borders, right? So every transaction is different. It's not that we can say, okay, we'll take the median or the average in every transaction. No, we need to negotiate, and there are risks and there are advantages, and there are various methods that we need to take into account. And we have leverage, and we have different factors that affect negotiation. But eventually, when you know what is the market practice, which is actually just taking data, compiling it, analyzing it, and understanding it. So that will help, and eventually it will be more cost-effective to clients.
We had a question as well, Rachel, we were going to ask the panel, is just picking up on what you've just said, Shira, is how will it go with the lawyer who they're going to be outgunned, the lawyer that has the full AI capability behind them and has developed that, has used that data and has really shaped a strategy, versus the lawyer who, and the same experience, same expertise of the lawyer who doesn't have the benefit of that data. Will we see a mismatch there, and will clients, that will be a niche for some lawyers, do you think? Maybe, Sarah, you can answer, or I think you may have a view on that as well.
Well, my view is that you have that. It's a great question, Linda, and you have that gap already today, right? You have you see consolidation and firms either grow larger or grow more virtual, like Khalid's firm, right? In any case, in both cases, in order to develop that scale, right? So you have already a gap of knowledge and the ability to provide full service based on data to a certain extent. Honestly, I'm not sure that data is shared and analyzed as it should and could today, but that infrastructure is there. And once you have those tools, then on one hand, of course, those that have the data and that they have the means to acquire and to integrate those solutions would have additional advantage on the counterparts. On the other hand, once those tools become available, like in Ilan's industry, for example, right? Then perhaps smaller firms or virtual firms could suddenly be giving a fight to the larger institutions. So these are two different ways things can develop. I would say that ultimately the tools should be available to anyone, and probably there will be also that network effect. So I, as a lawyer, perhaps even in a boutique law firm, may be able to leverage on the knowledge that is gathered from all the network of all lawyers that are using a solution, which is probably what LawGeeks and others are doing. So ultimately, I think this is those tools will actually enable a more, I guess, more advanced competition and allowing people to be leveraging on all the knowledge all together.
That's great, thanks. Yeah, and one thing we haven't touched on yet, which I do just want to sort of discuss, is your views on regulating legal tech innovation. How much oversight do you think, if any, there should be at the regulatory level? And maybe, Bill, we start with you, because I know you sort of alluded to this in your opening remarks.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I must say it's somewhat of a question near and dear to my heart, being a former regulator many years ago. There's a couple ways to look at it. I think one of them is, do you regulate the legal tech industry itself, and what does that mean? I think another way to look at it, and one that's a little more relevant to someone who sits in my chair, is how can legal tech work within the current regulatory framework? And what kind of collaboration can legal tech providers engage in with the regulators? And so if you look at the ADGM, for example, they, like I said, they've been very forward thinking in how legal tech can solve for regulatory problems. I think regulators generally, and this is my personal opinion, like smart legal tech that helps their supervised, clients or persons, whatever they're regulating, whoever they're regulating, comply with the law. I think we all agree that's a really good thing. And if there are tech providers out there that can help solve for that, and the regulator can get comfortable with, and they know that if this firm has adopted something, and that it can be automated, whereas this firm hasn't, and it has the chance for human error involved, there could be a comfort difference there. So I think, again, from my perspective, I look at it as, if you have a regulatory framework, how does legal tech fit in that to make sure that the actors within that framework are in compliance with the law? I don't know if to exactly answer your question, but I think it's an important part of the conversation.
By the way, we're already regulated, right? In each jurisdiction, there are ethic rules, and that would regulate also the legal tech.
Yep. So it's more about ensuring that the technology within the legal framework still complies with all the regulatory requirements at the top level. We do just have probably time for a couple more questions. I would just like to release another poll to the audience. And I know we've sort of touched on this in some of the discussions thus far, but out of the following, which factor do you think will drive a greater use of technology in the legal sector? So while we're waiting for those points to come in, I would just like to ask one more audience question. I think you touched upon this, but this is a question directly for you, Ilan. It's talking us through the difference, if any, between digitizing the sector and disrupting the sector through innovative solutions. And I think you sort of spoke about this before, about how differentiating that innovation versus the digitization.
It's a fine line between the two. I think it's always a journey, and I think the journey begins with the immediate, we call it the low-hanging fruit, right? Fixing the smaller problems, handling the day-to-day contracts, in our case, the ones you have the most of, and that don't require too much innovation on our part, and basically it's a repetitive work that can be done away with right now. This, once adopted, would lead to more standardization and, of course, more regulation and compliance with regulation, because right now we're not even allowed to give legal advice, right? Because we're not a lawyer, we're a computer. In Utah now, there's an innovative program that is looking into allowing certain systems and certain companies or certain non-legal entities, non-lawyer entities, to practice law in some way. So we're applying to that. We're going to be the first robot to be able to practice law anywhere in the world, I guess. So once this starts to happen, you'll see a lot more things that, a lot more systems that are talking to each other, right? So let's say you have your logics talk to my logics. Why are we even negotiating? I know what I can define what my needs are. You can define what your needs are. Instead of wasting all this time, bash those two programs together and let them communicate. And of course, this will lead to, logics have to negotiate with new logics that would come along, and it will be a slightly different one. And just like we have arbitration in stock market, and now we have APIs and standards for communicating between the different systems that are becoming more and more standard. This will happen eventually in legal. So you'll have, if I'm thinking, what a contract will look like in 20 years, it's not going to be the thing you're looking at today. It's going to be a digital entity. It's not going to have any language or human readable language associated with it. It's going to have a lot of definitions, and you'd be able to open it on your computer or your, whatever floating screen you'll have by then. And you'll see it in your language, and Shira will see it in her language, and everybody would be able to read the exact same contract in their language, and it's not going to be in any language. It's going to be something that's digital and probably self-regulate, self-enforcing, and all kinds of different things that you can attribute to a digital entity, which you can't to a piece of paper with some random characters on it.
I would add one word on this. We are seeing documents becoming more standard recently. Take for example the YC's famous SAFE, the Advanced Financing Instrument, and there was a lot of concern in the industry, at least here in Israel, about this is going to take away work from us lawyers because we're going to have a standard document. Put aside that in Israel people argue about anything, even if it's standard, right? Unlike, for example, the US. But actually what you see is that standardization is very helpful to lawyers. First and foremost, the volume of transactions is increasing so fast and in such capacity that anything that allows you actually to serve the client, which is only doable now through standard documents to a certain extent, is actually helpful to you as a lawyer. So I think whatever we're seeing with those template documents and the NVCA forms that allow you actually to process transactions faster is better for us, and hence anything that is technology advanced would be helpful to us lawyers as well. And this is why I answered on the survey that you had, what is going to bring in more technology? It's going to be client demand, and the client demand means a fast turnaround and huge volume of transactions. And anything that allows us to serve those transactions keeps work with us lawyers and allows us to focus on those more innovative ideas that are more challenging and intriguing. And hence I think that legal tech and the legal profession are actually aligned. There's no competition between those companies and us law firms and in-house companies.
Perhaps I can step in with a comment on this particular point, because I want to make a plug for two sets of data that have been produced on the adoption of legal technology during the last 12 to 18 months, because I think these data sets will help our listeners to understand just where the legal industry is today and how quickly legal tech is being adopted to sort of solve the challenges of the profession as it is today, in terms of the way the industry is moving. So the first report is the Gartner State of the Legal Function Report, which was released last September 2020. And the second report is the Association of Corporate Counsel, ACC's report on its global legal benchmarking survey, which was conducted in 2019. And both reports have extensive chapters on where external spend is going from corporations on legal matters and how legal tech is being used to solve the issue of reducing that external spend and bringing more of that work in-house, and enabling in-house lawyers in particular to become more effective at their work. The couple of trends that have come up in relation to those data sets, which is that litigation still constitutes the largest source of spend that corporations are making on external law firms. And yet, in relation to the adoption of legal tech, litigation and tools related to litigation are way below the industry average. I think they're only in the bottom 20% quartile of adopters who are using legal tech for the purpose of furthering litigation. Most legal tech nowadays is being used for the purpose of e-signature tools, contract management, document management, and matter management. So it's really about, at the moment, legal tech is really at the stage where it's being used to optimize document production, about drafting contracts. As Dia said, it's about making the negotiation process faster. But it does reveal that at this day and age where we are today, there's just this huge gap where there's still a lot of money going on very labor-intensive tasks, and yet the technology hasn't caught up yet to adopt that, to solve that issue and help to reduce that spend. So I think what I'm keen to do is to work with legal technology providers, especially new entrants, who want to try to start plugging that gap and closing that gap to help in-house departments to reduce their spend, and to use the data, which I think is very, very important in today's day and age, to justify the business case for investment into legal tech, to help support the investment of legal tech into new verticals and new types of use cases as well.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that, Khaled. And that actually ties in really nicely to the responses that we had from the polling question. So actually, 30% of people said that greater investment by law firms and lawyers will drive a greater use of technology, and then along with increased client demand, and then closely followed by upskilling of lawyers. So that ties into what the audience is seeing as well. I'm going to hand over to Linda for a final question. But before I do that, Linda, I do actually want to ask you the question that came in from before from Sahel about where and how a young lawyer with good tech knowledge can start careers in legal tech in Abu Dhabi. So maybe you could answer that one and then ask a closing question to our panelists.
Sure. Interesting question for career in legal tech. I actually think the law firms here are starting to do a lot in technology, to be quite honest. So I think we had an issue there on recruitment, or a topic on recruitment. I actually think that the law firms now are looking more for candidates who have legal technology, who have really refined technology skills. And to pick up Ilan's point before, that doesn't mean to say that they're terribly handy with Excel and Word and whatever else it might be. And they're not good, or it's not just that they're good at pagination of an electronic hearing bundle, but they're really a lot more sophisticated in that, and they've spent a lot in their career, and there's so much more now. And I know Shira teaches in where she is, and there's so much more, the spectrum now, in order to improve your skills as a lawyer, or to branch out onto that technology technology side. So I think the law firms are really right for that, for job opportunities, and I think you stand head and shoulders above people when you do that. And also, I don't know, in-house counsel as well. But I see the law firms as where that is really, the fertile ground for that. So, but I was really interested, Khaled, in the topic of litigation there, and that it's lag, and the transactional work is where there's been a greater uptick or greater use of technology. Sitting in a court at an arbitration centre, I can vouch for that, is that it looks very slow. But I see particularly the commercial courts around the world, and the extensive pressure on legal spend from clients, as that's changing. I mean, we're seeing now a lot more requests for technology-driven solutions for disclosure or discovery, and other ways that the clients can get through litigation much earlier. So, and also not to the end of a case, but to a point where they can settle their case. So to a point where they're in a negotiating position, the issues are crystallized, really the positions are crystallized, and you truly know what are those very knotty issues that exist between you. I think that's where I'm seeing, also we're huge on mediation here, that's where I'm seeing is technology and the way lawyers are working are bringing that dispute to a point where it's ripe for settlement. And I think that is where good AI and a really savvy, experienced lawyer with those negotiating skills, that's what clients need coming out of the pandemic and generally. So I don't know whether or not, Sherry, from your clients, if you see that. I know transactional, but on the litigation partners, whether or not that's what they're seeing as well.
Well, I can tell you that in 2013, I did an M&A where I represented the target, and actually I worked opposite the ears firm, and it was Microsoft that acquired a company in that space. So it was a technology tool that is aiding litigation, specifically in e-discovery and searching, very advanced search, not your normal Control F like in Word documents. So it's already there. And I know that our litigators are using technology tools to analyze, because we're in a digital age, right? We have WhatsApp and the emails and the phone calls and the documents, and we need to take all that, and that is tons of information, and analyze it. So that is already being done today, maybe not at the scale it should be, but I don't think that there is any other possibility, given the very large intake of data and documents. You won't be able to have people sit and just read page by page, or go and try to even kind of cross-reference between the time that the text was sent and the email was sent and the document was sent, and see kind of a one holistic picture of the facts. So that is already done today. There are various technologies that I know from Israeli companies that are available to that, and I think that anyone that is not making use of it is not probably making very good use of their time, and not servicing their clients that good either.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much for that. And sorry about that, Rachel. You were wrapping me up, and I unwrapped it. So in any event, what we wanted to ask you all was what you are all most excited about in the next 3 to 5 years in the legal sector, technology, otherwise. So what is it that you think is going to be a game changer that you could look forward to in the next 3 to 5 years?
I'd like to chip in, if you don't mind. Thanks, Linda, because I was smiling when you asked that question, because there is something that I'm very, very excited about, which is that the fact that most of us as lawyers today in the industry probably started using a computer in our early teens, if not mid-teens. And the lawyers that are now coming into the industry have been using smartphones and computers since they were probably 3 or 4 years old. And I think that is going to create a huge opportunity for law firms and the legal departments to start utilizing the skill set from those very, very tech-savvy lawyers who are coming through law school today, and then as they emerge into the profession, to see just how best they can capitalize on that skills that they bring and their understanding of technology, in the course of then helping them to help their departments and law firms to adopt legal technology. So I think we're seeing a very, very strong organic change within the industry. That's now starting to reform to accept very tech-savvy lawyers from within. And the thing that makes me the most excited is just seeing how younger lawyers are going to be coming into the profession and then changing it from within. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what they're going to achieve over the next 5 years.
Perfect. Ilan?
So I have a very similar take to Khalid's, but I think about it differently. I think about all the young lawyers who are tech savvy are going to come working for me to create legal tech and to solve those problems and to create more technology and bring the domain expertise into that, into the market and create great new software.
And I actually touch on that because I don't know if you know, but Ilan's co-founder, Nui, was actually an associate in our firm. and had this kind of great desire to create and innovate, and that is something that I would like to see, and I think that it also touches on what Khaled said, that we'll see this kind of new generation that is more innovative. They don't take maybe things as we were brought into the profession, and they can look at them in a more innovative manner with kind of greater technology skills. And I would like to see much more of Nuri and Ilan in this world to make our life much more interesting and easier. Because I like practicing law. I'm from those type of lawyers that actually like what they do. But I would want to do more of the interesting stuff, the negotiation, the adrenaline in transaction, and not the repetitive stuff. That is not that interesting.
Perfect. Bill.
Yeah, I think speaking on behalf of the in-house community, I think as the buyer of legal tech, it's just hearing these conversations and how law firms are working with technology service providers to make the services that are delivered to me as a buyer and the advice more efficient and more cost effective is the bottom line. And the more that can happen, the easier my life is, just frankly. So that's what I'm most excited about.
Perfect. Yeah.
Sure.
Last word on the most exciting.
So first, if Ilan can produce a bot that would duplicate myself or more than that, would be the most helpful in terms of billing. But otherwise, any tool that allows me instantly look at large set of data, analyze it, and derive conclusions and advice to the clients based on huge amount of data. And that allows us to be better than others and provide insights as to what's happening, what's behind the curve. That's what we are most excited about. And I presume we'll see this entering the legal market as has happened to many other sectors in the industry.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Excellent. Well, Rachel, as usual, we've gone down so many tracks here, interesting, fascinating tracks with this amazing panel.
No, it's been fabulous. Thank you guys so much for your contributions. You did not disappoint on the closing knowledge series for 2020. I do just want to apologize. I lost my control panel with about 15 minutes to go, so I apologize for any member of the audience if I completely ignored you. That was my computer. That was not me personally. But just from my side, thanks so much for your engagement to the panelists and the audience. And I'll hand over to Dilip for the closing remarks.
Well, thank you, Rachel. I was in New York last week, right before they were getting ready for a second wave, and they were planning to shut outdoor dining or shut dining in general. And I was sitting on the sidewalk in a little shack that had been built so you could dine. And we were sitting under freezers, and a friend of mine said, it's been a really rough year, but Dilip, it's amazing. Some of the best news of this year came out of your part of the world. And he was talking about the Abraham Accord. So I can tell you, what has happened here has inspired the world. This conversation that we had today is hopefully only the beginning. And I'm going to take a moment to actually tell you what I think and what I'm most excited about and what I predict will happen in the next shorter than 3 years. I think either Shira, Yair, or Ilan will open an office in the UAE. They will hire young Emiratis, and we are truly going to see integration across borders. Khaled will continue to be disruptive, and that will be interesting to see when he goes into the Israeli market. Linda, I think what you have shown the world in terms of digitization of the courts, this is something we talked about, and it would be great for you to share that with your colleagues in Israel. And Bill, hopefully you'll have an asset manager sitting in that building, not far from where we both sit, that is looking at investing in cross-border opportunities. So I look forward to that happening, and that's my prediction. I want to take a minute and thank my colleagues because this has been a tremendous journey. Linda, without you and your team at ADGM, Heather, Hannah, Case, everybody, none of this would have been possible. So thank you. Rachel, it's been great to take this from an idea to where we are today. And it's really been an outstanding year. And again, thank you all so much. And we look forward to next year. And hopefully we'll be in Israel or you'll be here with us in the UAE. So Linda, over to you for the last words.
Thanks, Dilip. Thank you. And thank you, Dilip, for your support on this. It's been a terrific collaboration on Knowledge Series. It started off as, the idea of let's get the most extraordinary people together to have an open dialogue in these destinations across the world. And here in Abu Dhabi with the Abraham Accord to finish is absolutely momentous and significant. On behalf of ADGM, ADGM Courts, ADGM Arbitration Center, I want to thank you all, Shira, Bill, Khaled, Ilan. Yeah, thank you very much for today and for the prep for this. We do look forward to keeping in touch with you, and you never know, you just might be sitting here as I am in ADGM in an office in the not too distant future. Hopefully not. Your colleagues will be using our digitized courts, but it's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you on this. You've been tremendous with your insights, and we're very grateful. So to Rachel, Dilip, thank you very much. Heather Sullivan from AIM Films, absolutely extraordinary support. So we thank AIM Films very much for hosting this. And to my team at the Arbitration Center and here at ADGM, you know who you are. Thank you very much. It's been brilliant. On that note, I wish you all a tremendous 2021, one with fewer challenges, so many more opportunities, so much happiness and health. And from us, thank you again and all the very best. We look forward to keeping in touch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Linda.